levels, shovels bury devils.
Welcome to Backwoods Teacher and our presentation on the Spanish-American War, also known as a splendid little war. The Spanish-American War, as told through some miscellaneous facts. It was the first unified war for the United States following the American Civil War. It also involved the first overseas engagement of the U.S. Navy. The war lasted a whopping 105 days. Although it is called the Spanish-American War, no combat took place in Spain or Los Estados Unidos. More men died from disease than battle in this war. As is typical of our government, the troops were sent to Cuba with wool uniforms. Good job. Well done. The rations, that's messed up down there. The rations purchased by the government contained food poisoning, and as the soldiers were on their way down to Cuba, they would open the cans up of the food and discover that they were rancid and rotten, and they often had to throw the food overboard. This leads to the later support by Teddy Roosevelt for the Pure Food and Drug Act. And the secret cause of the war, well, it was sugar. That's right, sugar. It was sugar. Yes, technology of the war. Well, the Spanish-American War was one of the last wars in which the cavalry still rode horses. That's right, horses. No, seriously, the technology. This is one of the first wars where America is really showing its industrial might. The ships were ironclad, and not just one of them like in the Civil War, but all of them. These babies rolled in, ready to go. The Gatling gun was perfected. There were even repeating guns mounted on the ships. So America's industrial might is what really helps it to dominate in this war against the Spanish. The Spanish throughout history have been no slouches when it comes to warfare and military engagement, but by this time America is growing, and America's economy and industry is really taking off, but the Spanish are starting to fall behind at this time. One of the main causes of this war is the media and something called yellow journalism. You have here in front of you an original document which has been censored by a nice little photograph of our very own Vice President Joe Biden. This is a very typical illustration showing the Spanish authorities searching American women aboard ships on the open sea. It suggests that, the Spaniards were lecherous, creepy fellows, which would account for a lot of our members of Congress, but in this case, it's illustrating this poor innocent woman who is forced to undress entirely and get searched on this ship while these men leer at her, much as Joe Biden is leering. So again, we censored this image. But yellow journalism was the practice of creating stories. It's much like the National Enquirer. And ironically, it's very much the opposite of what happens with the news today. The media wanted a war back then for something to talk about, for something to sell newspapers. Incidentally, this illustration, and it was an illustration, was done by Frederick Remington, the artist who is later known for his Western portraits of cowboys and Indians. And here is a typical Remington painting of the Rough Riders charging up the hill. They're pretty easy to recognize once you see them. Moving right along here. Oh, hold on a minute. Okay, one of the things that we'd like you to know today are how these various things caused America to go into the war. This was something of a shady war in that the justification for war was a little bit dubious, a little bit unclear. Spain had the largest empire for a long time, and it was formerly one of Europe's great empires, and it was very weakened by the end of the 19th century. So America is starting to come into its own. It's kind of like America's sort of like a teenager at this time, pushing and shoving in gym class, jockeying for position, trying to flex a little bit. So America wants to get in on the game of getting some colonial powers, and the rest of Europe is actively doing this in Africa and other parts of the world, and the U.S. is largely driven by the fact that they don't want to fall behind and get behind England or Germany or anyone else when it comes to having resources from other places. So Spain's empire becomes an easy target. It becomes kind of an because it was their type of thing. It was the example that could be made. And Spain's empire at this time included places such as Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. These colonies of Spain next to the U.S. essentially violated the Monroe Doctrine. You need to figure out why that is if you don't already know. So another cause was Cuba's war for independence. Explain why that was a cause. Yes, you need to do that. You need to actually answer that. Sugar was a cause. I hinted at that earlier. Find out why was sugar a cause for the war. Yellow journalism was a cause. The Delhomme letter. Delhomme was a person. Okay, that's so you need to find out what was in the Delhomme letter and how it was a cause. The USS Maine and the Teller Amendment. If you stay awake long enough, you might hear about at least a few of these.
The hill, gonna build me a mountain. Least I hope I will. Gonna build a mountain, gonna build it high. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, I only know I'm gonna try. Gonna build me a daydream from a little hope. Gonna push that daydream up the mountain slope. Gonna build a daydream, gonna see it through. Gonna build a mountain and a daydream, gonna make them both come true. Gonna build a heaven from a little hell. Gonna build me a heaven, and I know darn well, if I build my mountain with a lot of care and take my daydream.
Okay, you've had plenty of time to write that down, and if not, you can always visit Backwoods Teacher on YouTube again and look this baby up. Alright, here's some more specific information. One of the most famous battles of the Spanish-American War, like this is the battle to discuss when you're hanging out with your friends, or even better, your parents' friends, or even better, your grandparents' friends, and you want to impress them with your knowledge of the Spanish-American War. You can say things like, yeah, how about that battle at San Juan Hill? It was like the battle on the way to Santiago, and you have to pronounce it correctly like that. Anyhow, this battle was a major mop-up battle on Cuba. A Spanish fort was located at the top of this hill. So it's an uphill charge, essentially, just like this painting here shows you. And the Rough Riders, who were formed by Teddy Roosevelt, they were famous horsemen. They were known for their horse riding skills, equestrian skills. The irony of this is that in this battle they had to dismount. So they charge up this hill headlong into rifle fire. Again, Teddy Roosevelt running uphill, getting shot at, Your most recent presidents did not do anything cool like this. In addition to the Rough Riders were Buffalo Soldiers. These are African American soldiers who had joined the military, and they were parts of Roosevelt's regiment. And these brave men cleared the way for the final attack, engaging the enemy directly in fire. Teddy Roosevelt formed this unit, but he didn't want to lead it. He had enough common sense to know that he did not have military experience, so he deferred to the man in charge and was listed as being a lieutenant colonel. The Spanish resistance on Cuba collapsed after this battle, and just some interesting facts, the Rough Riders were quarantined after the war because of the amount of disease coming back from being in this tropical area, so they had to spend some time isolated, and I think it was outside of New York that they did this. 1 of every 3 Rough Riders died, was wounded, or got a disease during the war, a tropical disease, nothing strange. Calm down. The commander in charge of the Rough Riders unit, the overall commander, was a former Confederate officer. This is Commodore George Dewey. Commodore is one of the highest ranks you can get in the U.S. Navy. Dewey was an excellent commander. He's responsible for the U.S. naval victories in Manila, which is in the Philippines, and later back in the Caribbean. He's famous for a rather understated quote where he told his officer, "You may fire when ready." He's very calm about his engagement with the Spanish. Another one of the causes that you were supposed to look up earlier was the USS Maine. This was a ship. Notice the USS, just like USS Enterprise. Yeah, it's a ship that was sent from the United States to Havana, which is in Cuba, to protect American interests and basically to get Americans out of Cuba. However, shortly after the ship arrived, it mysteriously exploded, killing 260 of the 350 sailors on board. The Spanish Navy helped to rescue many of the U.S. sailors, and then U.S. newspapers began to use this event as a way to gather support for the war. So they blamed the Spanish, some people blamed the Cubans, a few even blamed Americans for attempting just to do something to get us into the war, but the news used this as an opportunity to get everyone fired up against the Spanish. Later results showed that there was an interior explosion because the metal was bent outward. These are the main areas where the battles took place: the Philippines, the Caribbean, and Cuba. So just some general knowledge you should have about this event. The outcomes of the Spanish-American War are also essential for you to know because they will help you to build upon other ideas we will discuss later. For example, one of the outcomes of this war is that the U.S. is now an imperial power. We now have bases far and wide outside of our own shores. Specifically, we have bases in the Pacific, which gives us a lot more control over trade and gives us much more of a military presence. Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which is where some of the war on terror suspects are held, and it's very controversial amongst liberals, but not so much among regular Americans. It is acquired during this time, and even after Cuba becomes communist, the U.S. still retains this bay. The U.S. becomes a dominant force in the Western Hemisphere. There's another ship, the USS Oregon, and it attempts to arrive to help out in this war and does not make it in time. We'll talk about that ship later. And disease and warfare become linked as disease takes a toll on the soldiers, and then future problems are hinted at. We have future problems with Cuba. The Philippines expect to be liberated, but then we have a second small war where we have to put down a Philippine resistance. And Japan in World War II will attack a lot of